Welcome. Before we descend into the darkness beneath Chicago, I need to know, are you ready for what's down there? If you're joining me for this journey into the deep places under the city, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in Chicago right now, walking above these very tunnels without knowing what lies beneath? Or are you somewhere else entirely, wondering what might be growing under your city? Hit that subscribe button, ***, if you want more horror stories that'll make you think twice about what's lurking in the forgotten spaces of our world. And smash the like button if you're brave enough to hear what happened when a construction crew broke through a wall that should have stayed sealed. Because what they found down there had been waiting since 1871. It had been breeding in the dark. And it was hungry for connection. This is a 3-part story. Each episode will take you deeper into the nightmare beneath Chicago's streets. By the end, you'll understand why some doors should never be opened, and why some of us open them anyway. Now, let's begin. The sledgehammer's impact sent reverberations through Maya Chen's arms as another chunk of century-old brick crumbled away from the wall. Dust billowed into the harsh glare of the work lights, turning the air in the sub-basement thick and golden. "That's it," called Derek Moss, the site supervisor, squinting at the newly revealed opening. "I told you there was something back here." The original blueprints showed a service tunnel, but it's been sealed off since at least the 20s. Maya set down the sledgehammer and approached the ragged hole they'd created. Cool air breathed out from the darkness beyond, carrying with it a smell that made her nose wrinkle: damp earth, decay, and something else. Something organic and faintly sweet, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. The Mercy Hospital renovation project had been underway for 3 months, but this was the first real surprise. The building dated back to 1891, constructed 20 years after the Great Fire had reduced most of Chicago to ash. Mercy had been built atop the ruins of earlier structures, its foundations sunk deep into layers of the city's history. Now, as part of a massive modernization effort, Maya's construction crew was excavating the lowest levels to install new infrastructure. "Should we report this to the Historical Society?" asked Tommy Reeves, one of the younger workers, peering nervously into the opening. Derek laughed. "And wait 6 months for them to document every brick? The schedule's already tight enough. We'll take some pictures, make notes, and keep moving. Besides, it's just an old utility tunnel. Probably flooded and collapsed further in." Maya pulled out her phone and activated the flashlight, shining it through the hole. The beam revealed a passageway about 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, carved through earth and lined with age-blackened bricks. The floor was covered in a strange, pale growth, not quite fungus, not quite mold, but something that reminded her of sea anemones, all-reaching tendrils and delicate fronds. "Look at that," she murmured. "Some kind of extremophile organism. It's actually kind of beautiful." "It's disgusting is what it is," Tommy said. "I vote we seal it back up." Derek shook his head. "Can't do that. We need to map the full foundation structure. Maya, you and Carlos suit up and do a quick survey. Just go in far enough to see if it connects to the main tunnel system we already know about." 1 hour, in and out. 20 minutes later, Maya stood at the entrance again. This time, wearing a hard hat, respirator, and carrying a proper industrial flashlight. Carlos Rodriguez, the crew's most experienced tunnel rat, stood beside her with surveying equipment and a digital camera. "You ever notice?" Carlos said conversationally as they ducked through the opening. "How every sealed-up space in this city has that same smell? Like the earth itself is holding its breath?" Maya didn't answer. She was too focused on the growth beneath their feet. Up close, it was even stranger: translucent filaments forming intricate networks across the tunnel floor, pulsing almost imperceptibly. When she trained her light on one cluster, the tendrils seemed to contract, pulling away from the brightness. "It's photosensitive," she said. "Carlos, look at this." But Carlos had moved ahead, his light bobbing in the darkness. "Maya, you need to see this. The tunnel goes way deeper than we thought." She hurried to catch up, her boots crunching on debris that had fallen from the ceiling over the decades. The passage stretched ahead, arrow straight, descending at a gentle angle. Every 10 feet or so, ancient gas lamps jutted from the walls, their fixtures corroded into delicate lace. "This isn't just a utility tunnel," Carlos said, examining one of the lamps. "This was built for people to use regularly. See how carefully it's constructed? And look, there are rooms branching off." He was right. As they progressed, they found doorways opening into small chambers, most collapsed or flooded. In one, Maya's light revealed the rotted remains of wooden furniture, a desk, a filing cabinet, what might have been a cot. Papers had decomposed into papery pulp on the floor. "What the hell was this place?" Maya wondered aloud. Carlos snapped photos methodically. "Could be anything. During Prohibition, there were speakeasies and smuggling routes all through the underground. Or maybe it was part of the old freight tunnel system. Chicago's got more than 60 miles of tunnels down here, you know. Most of them forgotten. They moved deeper." Maya kept checking her watch, aware that Derek wanted them back in an hour. But the tunnel seemed to pull at her, awakening some buried curiosity. The pale growth had become thicker, forming curtains that hung from the ceiling in places, forcing them to push through. "Carefully. It's everywhere down here," Carlos observed. "Whatever it is, it's been growing a long time. Decades, maybe. Or longer," Maya said quietly. The tunnel opened suddenly into a larger chamber, and both of them stopped, their lights playing across a sight that defied immediate comprehension. The room was perhaps 30 feet across and perfectly circular, the walls lined with the same meticulous brickwork. But it was what filled the space that arrested their attention. The pale growth had taken over completely, forming structures that rose from floor to ceiling shapes that were almost architectural, like columns or arches, but organic and flowing. In the center of the room, the growth had formed something that resembled a massive cocoon, easily 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide at its broadest point. "Jesus Christ," Carlos breathed. Maya approached slowly, her scientific training overriding her instinctive revulsion. The surface of the cocoon was translucent in places, revealing layers of the fibrous material within. And deeper still, something darker, something with mass and shadow. "There's something inside," she said. "Don't touch it," Carlos warned, but Maya had already extended her hand, her gloved fingers hovering an inch from the surface. Heat radiated from it. She could feel it through the latex. "It's warm," she reported. "Carlos, whatever this is, it's active. Metabolically active." A sound echoed through the chamber, then a deep, rhythmic thrumming that seemed to come from the walls themselves, or perhaps from below. It resonated in Maya's chest, making her teeth ache. "We need to go," Carlos said urgently. "Right now. This isn't right." But Maya was transfixed by the cocoon. In its translucent depths, she thought she saw movement, a shifting of the darkness within, like something turning in sleep. "Maya!" Carlos grabbed her arm. "Now!" The thrumming grew louder, and cracks appeared in the cocoon's surface hairline fractures that leaked a clear, viscous fluid. The smell intensified, no longer just sweet, but cloying, suffocating. They ran. Behind them, Maya heard something that might have been the cocoon splitting open, or might have been the chamber itself collapsing. She didn't look back. They scrambled through the tunnel, pushing through the hanging curtains of growth, which now seemed to reach for them, clinging to their clothes and equipment. When they burst back through the hole in the Mercy Hospital basement, both were gasping, wild-eyed. The construction crew gathered around, concern on their faces. "What happened?" Derek demanded. Carlos bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Maya pulled off her respirator and looked back at the dark opening. "We need to seal that tunnel," she said. "Right now. And then we need to call someone. I don't know who, the CDC maybe. Or, what did you see?" Derek pressed. Maya met his eyes. "Something that shouldn't be down there. Something alive." Derek laughed nervously. "Come on! You found some weird cave fungus and got spooked. This is Chicago. Everything down here is weird and old and gross. I got it on camera," Carlos said, straightening up. He reached for the digital camera hanging around his neck. It was covered in the pale growth, the tendrils having worked their way under the casing. As Carlos touched it, the camera sparked once and died, the screen cracking as the growth contracted. "The hell?" Carlos yanked the camera off and threw it to the ground. Where it had rested against his chest, his shirt showed a pattern of small burns. Tommy picked up a shovel. "I'm with Maya. Seal it up. Seal it up right now." But Derek shook his head. "We have to document this properly. I'll call the project manager. Get the right people down here. In the meantime, we'll post someone to watch the entrance. Nobody goes in or out until we have authorization." "You're not listening," Maya insisted. "There's something." "Enough," Derek cut her off. "I know you're rattled, but we have procedures. Go home, both of you. Get cleaned up. We'll sort this out tomorrow." Maya wanted to argue, but the exhaustion hit her suddenly. Her arms ached from wielding the sledgehammer, and her lungs felt coated in the tunnel's thick air. She nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but I'm filing a full report. And I strongly recommend that opening be sealed until proper containment procedures are in place." As she gathered her things to leave, Maya glanced back once more at the dark opening in the basement wall. The work lights illuminated the first few feet of the tunnel beyond, revealing the pale growth that covered every surface. And in that moment, she could have sworn she saw the tendrils moving, growing, reaching slowly toward the light and the warmth of the occupied space beyond. Maya didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the Chicago Public Library's main branch, arriving just before closing. The reference librarian looked annoyed at the late request but directed her to the local history section and the microfiche machines. She started with the Great Fire of 1871, reading contemporary accounts of the destruction. 3 square miles of the city consumed, 17,000 structures destroyed, at least 300 dead, though many believed the true number was far higher. In 3 days, Chicago had been reduced to ash and rubble, but it was the rebuilding that interested Maya. Within days, plans were underway to construct a new, greater Chicago atop the ruins. The city actually raised its street level by as much as 14 feet in some places, building new foundations on top of the old. The previous iteration of Chicago, its basements, its tunnels, its underground spaces, was simply buried and forgotten. She found references to the Mercy Hospital site. Before the fire, it had been a warehouse district near the river. After the fire, the land was purchased by a medical collective and construction began in 1889. But there were gaps in the records, months where no building activity was documented, despite other sources indicating construction was underway. Maya switched to newspaper archives, scanning through editions from 1889 to 1891. Most articles focused on the hospital's grand opening, its modern facilities, the generous donors. But then she found something odd. A small article from October 1890, buried on page 12 of the Tribune. Mysterious illness strikes construction workers. The article described a sudden affliction that had struck the crew building Mercy Hospital. 12 men fell ill within days, complaining of fever, hallucinations, and a burning sensation beneath their skin. 3 died before doctors could determine the cause. The remaining 9 recovered slowly, but several were committed to asylums, claiming they could still feel something moving inside them. The official explanation was toxic gas from disturbed ground. The site had been closed for 2 weeks for ventilation and decontamination. Maya photographed the article with her phone, her hand shaking slightly. She dug deeper, finding more scattered references. An 1892 article about collapsed tunnels flooding the hospital's sub-basement. An 1895 piece about mysterious sounds reported from below the building. A 1901 investigation into missing maintenance workers. They were eventually found, but the circumstances were deemed too disturbing for publication. Then the trail went cold. After 1901, there were no more unusual incidents reported. It was as if whatever had plagued the early years had simply stopped. Or been contained, Maya thought. "We're closing," the librarian announced, startling Maya from her research. She gathered her notes and headed for the exit, her mind churning. Outside, the November night had turned cold, a wind sweeping in from the lake that cut through her jacket. She pulled out her phone to call Carlos, wanting to compare notes. But a text from Derek was already waiting. "Emergency meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Be there." Short and ominous. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She drove home through mostly empty streets, the city's towers rising around her like the fossilized bones of some massive creature. Chicago had always fascinated her with its layers, not just the physical strata of old and new construction, but the layers of story, of history, of secrets, buried and forgotten. Now she wondered what else might be down there, beneath the foundations, in the dark spaces where the old city still existed, entombed and dreaming. The apartment was dark when she entered, which was wrong. Her roommate Sophie was supposed to be home, studying for her nursing exams. Maya flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. Sophie? Her voice echoed in the space, too loud, too alone. Maya pulled out her phone for light and moved through the apartment. Sophie's bedroom door stood open. Her bed was made, her desk neat. Nothing appeared disturbed. Maya checked the bathroom. The kitchen, empty. She was about to call Sophie's phone when she noticed something on the living room floor, a scatter of pale filaments, like the ones from the tunnel, forming a trail that led to the closet. No, not possible. She approached slowly, phone held out like a talisman. The closet door was cracked open, darkness beyond. The filaments disappeared into that darkness. Maya's rational mind screamed at her not to open it fully, but her hand seemed to move of its own accord, pulling the door wide. The closet was empty, except for coats and shoes. The filaments ended at the back wall, but when Maya leaned in to examine them more closely, she saw that they weren't from the tunnel at all, just mold, ordinary apartment mold, growing in the damp corner. She laughed, a shaky sound of relief. The tunnel had gotten to her, made her paranoid. She was seeing threats where none existed. Her phone buzzed with a text. From Sophie. Pulled extra shift at hospital. Back late. You okay? Maya typed back. Fine. Long day. See you tomorrow. She made tea, trying to calm her nerves. The research had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Those old articles, the missing workers, the men who died claiming something was inside them, it all felt too similar to what she'd encountered in the tunnel. But that was impossible. Whatever organism was growing down there, it was just that, an organism. Probably some extremophile species that had adapted to the environment. Strange and worth studying, certainly, but not malevolent. Not intelligent. Yet she couldn't shake the memory of how the tendrils had recoiled from her light, or how the cocoon had seemed to sense their presence. Maya tried to sleep, but found herself staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the building. Water in pipes, the hum of electricity, the settling of old wood. Chicago was a city of sounds, especially at night. Usually, she found them comforting. Tonight, every creak and groan seemed ominous. Around 2 a.m., she heard something different, a low, rhythmic sound, almost like breathing. It seemed to come from below, from the apartment beneath hers. Maya got out of bed and pressed her ear to the floor. The sound was real, deep and steady, a thrumming that resonated in her bones. The same sound she'd heard in the chamber below Mercy Hospital. No, she was being ridiculous. It was probably just the building's heating system kicking on, or someone's bass-heavy music playing at low volume. But even as she tried to rationalize it, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her home. Not physically, but in some other way. As if by discovering that chamber, by touching the cocoon, she'd drawn the attention of something vast and ancient. She spent the rest of the night in her living room, with all the lights on, waiting for dawn. The emergency meeting at Mercy Hospital began precisely at 7 a.m. Maya arrived to find not just the construction crew, but representatives from the city's building department, the project's engineering firm, and 2 people in suits who didn't introduce themselves but took notes on everything said. Derek looked exhausted, his usual confidence replaced by barely contained anxiety. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began. "We have a situation." Last night, around 11 p.m., the night watchman reported unusual activity in the sub-basement. The sealed tunnel, we discovered it's no longer sealed. A murmur went through the room. Maya felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean, no longer sealed?" she asked. Derek pulled up photos on his laptop, projecting them onto the wall. The images showed the basement area where they'd broken through, but the hole they'd made had expanded dramatically. The surrounding wall had crumbled away, as if something had pushed through from the inside. The pale growth covered everything, spreading across the basement floor in a thick mat. This happened in less than 12 hours, Derek continued. And it's not stopping. The growth is advancing at approximately 2 feet per hour. One of the suited men stood. We're evacuating the hospital. All patients are being transferred to other facilities as of this morning. This building is being quarantined. Quarantined? Maya repeated. By whom? That information is classified, the man said smoothly. What's important is that you and your crew tell us everything you saw in that tunnel. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Carlos spoke up from the back of the room. Maybe you should tell us what we're dealing with. Because this isn't normal. That growth, it's not like any fungus or bacteria I've ever seen. It's almost like it's coordinated. The second suited man exchanged a glance with his colleague. We'll be conducting individual interviews. In the meantime, no one discusses this situation with anyone outside this room. There will be legal consequences for violation of this directive. The meeting dissolved into chaos as workers shouted questions and objections. Maya slipped out into the hallway, her mind racing. The way those men had responded, the immediate quarantine, this wasn't the first time they'd encountered something like this. She found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone, searching for any historical records of quarantines or unusual containment procedures in Chicago. Most results were about the 1,995 heat wave or various disease outbreaks, nothing relevant. But then she found a blog post from an urban explorer, someone who'd been documenting Chicago's hidden spaces for years. The post was from 2018 and titled The Sealed Sections, Chicago's Forbidden Underground. There are parts of the old tunnel system that have been sealed off for over a century, the blogger wrote. Not collapsed or flooded, but deliberately walled up with reinforced concrete. I've talked to city engineers who've seen the original closure orders. Always vague references to contamination or structural instability, but never specifics. One guy told me he'd seen a memo from the 1960 that mentioned organic containment protocols for certain sectors. When I tried to FOIA those documents, I was told they didn't exist. Make of that what you will. The post included a crude map of Chicago's underground, with several areas marked in red, the sealed sections. Maya zoomed in. One of the marked areas was directly beneath Mercy Hospital. Found something interesting? Maya jumped. One of the suited men had approached silently. Up close, she could see he was older than she'd first thought, with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Just researching the history, Maya said carefully. This is my field, urban archaeology and construction. I want to understand what we uncovered. The man studied her for a long moment. My name is Richard Keller. I work for a private firm that consults on unusual infrastructure issues. Miss Chen, you impressed me in that meeting. You didn't panic, and you asked the right questions. I'd like to hire you. Hire me for what? To help us map and contain this situation. You've been inside that tunnel. You've seen the growth patterns. We need people who understand the city's underground structure and can think analytically under pressure. Maya hesitated. What is that thing down there? Really? Keller glanced around to ensure they were alone. Have you heard of extremophiles? Organisms that thrive in extreme conditions? Deep sea vents, radioactive waste, Antarctic ice? Of course. I mentioned them yesterday. What we've found beneath Chicago is similar, but far more complex. It's an organism, or rather a colony organism, that's been living in the sealed sections of the old city since the 1,870. We believe it originated in the debris and ash left by the Great Fire, organic material compressed and heated under pressure, creating conditions that allowed something new to develop, something that adapted to darkness, to isolation, to feeding on the minerals and compounds in the earth itself. Maya felt her skin crawl. You're saying it's been down there for over 150 years? Growing, spreading, evolving. The sections we sealed in the past contained smaller infestations. This is different. This is what we believe to be the main colony, the mother mass. Keller's expression was grim. And your crew just woke it up. Why wasn't the hospital built somewhere else? If you knew, we didn't know it was here. The old records were lost or deliberately destroyed. We've been playing catch-up for decades, trying to map the extent of the infestation and ensure it stays contained. He handed her a card. Think about my offer. We're setting up a command center in the building next door. If you want answers, that's where you'll find them. Before Maya could respond, Keller walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway with a business card that listed no company name, just a phone number. She looked at it for a long moment, then slipped it into her pocket. Through the window beside her, Maya could see the morning sun rising over Lake Michigan, painting the water gold and pink. It was beautiful. Chicago waking to another day. Millions of people going about their lives with no idea of what lurked beneath their feet. In the distance, she could hear sirens, fire trucks, or ambulances, the ever-present soundtrack of urban life. But Maya knew that some emergencies couldn't be solved with water or medicine. Some threats were too old, too alien, too deeply embedded in the city's very foundation. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Basement level expanding. Need you here now. Keller. Maya took a deep breath, made her decision, and headed for the stairs. The descent had only just begun. The command center was chaos. Maya entered to find a 40-foot trailer, crammed with monitoring equipment, computer stations, and at least 20 people, all moving with urgent purpose. Screens lined the walls, displaying real-time feeds from cameras positioned throughout Mercy Hospital and the surrounding area. The largest screen showed a three-dimensional wireframe map of the underground tunnel system with sections highlighted in angry red. Keller spotted her immediately and waved her over to a central console where a woman with steel-gray hair was studying thermal imaging data. Dr. Sarah Chen? This is Maya Chen? No relation, I assume? The woman extended her hand without looking away from the screens. None that I know of, Maya replied, shaking it. Doctor. Chen is a mycologist specializing in subterranean organisms, Keller explained. She's been studying the Chicago infestation for 15 years. Infestation, Maya repeated. You make it sound like termites. Dr. Chen finally looked at her, and Maya was struck by the intensity in her eyes, the gaze of someone who'd seen things that defied comfortable categorization. I wish it were termites, Doctor, Chen said. At least we understand those. What we're dealing with is something that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of biology. A chimeric organism that displays characteristics of fungi, slime molds, and colonial invertebrates, but doesn't fit cleanly into any taxonomic category. She pulled up a microscopic image on one of the screens. Maya leaned in, fascinated, despite her unease. The image showed an intricate network of filaments, but unlike any mycelium she'd seen before. The structures were too regular, too organized, with nodes that appeared almost crystalline. We've never been able to get a complete sample, Dr. Chen continued. The organism has a defense mechanism when separated from the main colony. Individual sections break down rapidly into a kind of protoplasmic sludge. It's as if it has to remain connected to survive, or chooses break, to self-destruct, rather than be captured. Chooses? Maya picked up on the word. You're suggesting it's intelligent? I'm saying it behaves in ways that suggest coordination far beyond simple biological responses. The colony appears to have something analogous to a nervous system, allowing for communication and collective decision-making across vast distances. Alarm beeped on one of the consoles. A technician called out, growth rate increasing, now advancing at 4 feet per hour. And Dr. Chen, it's showing directional movement. Directional how? Keller moved to the screen, toward the steam tunnels. If it reaches those, it'll have access to the entire thermal distribution system under the loop. Maya felt her stomach drop. Chicago's downtown Loop District was served by an extensive network of steam tunnels that provided heating to buildings across multiple city blocks. If the organism got into that system, how long do we have? Keller demanded. At current growth rate, maybe 6 hours. Dr. Chen turned to Maya. You've been in the main chamber. What did you see inside the large cocoon structure? Maya described what she remembered. The translucent walls, the heat, the sense of something massive contained within. Carlos and I heard it crack, she added, just before we ran. Has anyone checked if it's still intact? The room fell silent. Keller and Dr. Chen exchanged looks that told Maya everything she needed to know. You haven't sent anyone back in, she said. You're too afraid of what you'll find. Every person we've sent into the active growth zones has experienced severe psychological effects, Dr. Chen admitted. Hallucinations, paranoia, fugue states. 2 are still hospitalized. We think the organism releases some kind of chemical signal that affects human neurology, or it's trying to communicate, Maya said quietly. The words hung in the air. Several people turned to stare at her. Explain, Keller said. Maya thought back to the tunnel. The way the growth had seemed to react to her presence. When I touched the cocoon, right before it cracked, I felt something. Not just heat. It was like a pressure in my mind, trying to push through, like when you know someone's staring at you, that sense of attention. She met Keller's eyes. What if it's not attacking? What if it's trying to reach out? Reach out, Dr. Chen said slowly. To do what? I don't know, but you said it's been down there since the Great Fire. That's over 150 years of isolation, feeding on minerals and earth. Maybe it's never encountered living, mobile organisms before. Maybe we're as alien to it as it is to us. Or maybe, one of the technicians interjected, it's been waiting, growing, getting ready. Ready for what? Maya challenged. No one had an answer. A new alarm sounded, this one more urgent. The central screen flashed red, and Keller swore under his breath. What now? Maya asked. We have a breach, the technician reported, typing frantically. The growth just penetrated the main water line serving the hospital. It's spreading through the pipe system. Cut the water supply, Keller ordered. Already done, but the pipes connect to the municipal system. If we don't contain this, in the next 30 minutes, it could reach the pumping station at, I know what it could reach, Keller interrupted. He turned to Maya. You asked what it's getting ready for. Maybe this is the answer. Maybe it's finally strong enough to spread beyond the underground. Doctor, Chen was already moving, pulling up schematics of the water system. There's an access junction here, about 200 yards from the hospital. If we can create a chemical barrier, something toxic enough to kill the growth but contained enough not to contaminate the drinking water, we might stop it. What kind of chemical? Maya asked. We've had some success with a copper sulfate compound. The organism seems sensitive to heavy metals, but someone would need to deploy it at the junction point manually. The concentration required would be lethal to humans in enclosed spaces. A suicide mission, Maya said flatly. A hazmat suit would provide protection, Dr. Chen countered. For a limited time, maybe 30 minutes before the seals fail. Keller was already shaking his head. I can't ask anyone to. I'll do it, Maya interrupted. Everyone turned to look at her. She was surprised at herself, but the conviction was real. She'd opened this door, literally. She'd broken through the wall and let the organism know there was a world beyond its sealed chamber. In some way she couldn't quite articulate. That made her responsible. You don't know what you're volunteering for, Keller said. Then brief me quickly. 20 minutes later, Maya stood in a storage room being fitted with a Level A hazmat suit, the full body, fully encapsulated kind, with its own air supply. The suit was bright yellow and past, made her feel like a deep-sea diver preparing to enter hostile waters. Which, she supposed, wasn't far from the truth. Dr. Chen handed her a modified backpack tank. This contains the copper sulfate solution under pressure. When you reach the junction, you'll see multiple pipes converging. Look for the one with pale growth visible on the exterior. That's your target. Attach this nozzle to any access port and open the valve. The pressure should force the solution deep into the pipe system. Should? Maya raised an eyebrow. Will? Dr. Chen corrected. Probably. Reassuring. I'm a scientist, not a motivational speaker. But Dr. Chen's expression softened. Listen. If you start feeling strange, disoriented, euphoric, hearing voices, that means the organism's chemical signals are breaching your suit. You need to abort immediately. Don't try to be a hero. Just get out. Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed herself. The suit made everything feel distant and unreal, like she was already separated from the world. Carlos appeared in the doorway, "You're insane," he said without preamble. "You know that, right?" "Nice to see you too." "I'm serious, Maya. We barely made it out last time, and we weren't even in the thick of it. This thing, whatever it is, it's dangerous." "I know. But if we don't stop it here, if it gets into the water system..." She didn't finish the thought. They both knew what could happen. An organism that had adapted to survive in isolation suddenly given access to the city's circulatory system. It could spread everywhere, reaching every building, every home. Carlos sighed. "Fine, but I'm going with you." "Carlos, not negotiable. You need someone to watch your back. And I've been thinking about that chamber, about what we saw. I want another look." Before Maya could argue, Keller entered. "Suit up if you're going," he told Carlos. Then, to Maya, "You'll have full radio contact with us. First sign of trouble, we pull. You out. Understood?" "Understood." But as they headed for the tunnel entrance, Maya wondered if any of them really understood what they were doing. They were amateurs playing with forces they barely comprehended, trying to contain something that had been evolving in darkness for longer than any of them had been alive. The access point was a utility door in the hospital's sub-basement, now guarded by 2 armed security personnel who stepped aside to let them pass. Beyond was a stairwell that descended into earth and shadow, the walls glistening with moisture and traced with the pale filaments of the organism. Maya clicked on her helmet light and began to descend. Carlos close behind. Their breathing sounded loud in the suits, amplified by the recycled air systems. "Radio check." Keller's voice crackled in her ear. "Can you hear me?" "Loud and clear," Maya confirmed. "You're heading for the junction. Based on our maps, it should be approximately 400 yards ahead, bearing northeast. The growth density increases as you go deeper, so watch your step. Some areas may be unstable." The stairs ended at a tunnel that looked nothing like the one Maya and Carlos had explored the previous day. This was part of the official city infrastructure: concrete walls, metal pipes along the ceiling, emergency lights that flickered intermittently. But the organism had claimed it utterly. The pale growth covered every surface like a thick carpet, and the hanging structures they'd seen before had become almost architectural, forming columns and arches that seemed to serve some unknown purpose. "It's beautiful," Carlos murmured, in a terrifying way. He was right. There was an alien elegance to the structures, a sense of intention in their arrangement. Maya paused to examine one of the columns more closely. Through her faceplate, she could see the individual filaments that comprised it, all working together in perfect coordination. "Maya, Carlos, we're seeing increased thermal activity ahead of you." Dr. Chen's voice came through the radio. "The organism is most active in that sector. Stick to the planned route and move quickly." They pressed on. The tunnel began to pulse around them, a slow, rhythmic contraction that seemed to originate from somewhere ahead. Maya felt it through the floor, through the walls. The organism wasn't just growing, it was breathing. "That sound," Carlos said. "It's like a heartbeat," Maya finished. Just like in the chamber, the junction came into view, exactly where the maps had indicated. 5 large pipes converged in a space about 15 feet square, all of them now coated in the pale growth. But it was what had grown around the pipes that made both of them stop. The organism had built something. There was no other word for it. The filaments had woven themselves into a structure that enclosed the junction like a cage, or perhaps like ribs protecting vital organs, and within that structure, shapes moved. "Are those?" Carlos's voice trailed off. Maya stepped closer, her light playing across the interior of the cage. The shapes were roughly human-sized, suspended in cocoons like the large one they'd seen in the chamber, but these were smaller, more numerous. She counted 7, no, 8 of them. "Command, we have a situation," Maya said into her radio. "There are cocoons here. Multiple cocoons with something inside them." Static crackled in response. Then Keller's tense voice. "Can you identify the contents?" Maya approached the nearest cocoon, her heart hammering. Through the translucent membrane, she could make out a human form, clothes, limbs, a face distorted by the organic material surrounding it. "They're people," she said quietly. The missing maintenance workers. They're still down here. Are they alive? Dr. Chen demanded. Maya reached out with a gloved hand, pressing against the cocoon's surface. It was warm, and beneath her palm, she felt movement. Not the person inside, but the cocoon itself, responding to her touch. The surface rippled, and the filaments rearranged themselves, creating a clear window. She found herself staring into the face of a middle-aged man. His eyes closed, his expression peaceful, too peaceful. His chest rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. Alive, but not awake. They're alive, Maya confirmed. But they're integrated, connected to it somehow. Get out of there, Keller ordered. Now, deploy the solution and abort the mission. But Maya was transfixed by what she was seeing. The man's skin showed patterns, delicate traceries that looked like veins but were actually filaments of the organism growing just beneath the surface. He wasn't being consumed. He was being preserved, transformed. Maya! Carlos grabbed her arm. We need to move. She shook herself free of the spell and focused on the task. The largest pipe, the one that connected to the municipal water system, was easy to identify. It was nearly 3 feet in diameter, and the growth on it pulsed with that same rhythmic thrumming. Maya unslung the backpack tank and moved toward the access port. Her hands shook as she attached the nozzle. This was it. The moment where she either saved the city or doomed it to something worse than contamination. Carlos, help me secure this. Together, they fastened the coupling, making sure the seal was tight. Maya's hand hovered over the valve. Command, ready to deploy. Confirm authorization. Pause. Then Keller, authorization confirmed. Deploy the solution. Maya turned the valve. The tank shuddered as pressure forced the copper sulfate solution into the pipe. Through the walls, Maya heard a sound like steam escaping a high, keening noise that rose in pitch and volume. The organism reacted immediately. The growth on the pipes began to convulse, filaments whipping through the air like lashing tentacles. It's working! Dr. Chen's voice crackled with excitement. Thermal. Signatures are dropping. The organism is retreating from the pipe system. But, in the junction chamber, something else was happening. The cocoons were opening. Maya watched in horror as the membranes split, spilling their contents. The man she'd seen tumbled out, gasping, his eyes flying open. But they weren't human eyes anymore. They were shot through with pale filaments, glowing faintly in the darkness. Carlos, we need to go. But Carlos was staring at the other cocoons, which were also beginning to open. Maya, look! That one, I know him. That's David Reeves, Tommy's brother. He went missing 3 years ago. The man David emerged from his cocoon with jerky, uncertain movements, like a puppet learning to walk. When he spoke, his voice was layered, multiple tones speaking in unison. You're hurting us, the voices said. Why are you hurting us? Maya felt ice run down her spine. It wasn't just David speaking. It was the organism, using him as a mouthpiece, using all of David, them. The other figures emerged from their cocoons, surrounding Maya and Carlos. They moved in perfect synchronization, their heads tilting at the same angle, their eyes fixed on the intruders. We've been alone so long, the voices said through multiple mouths. Buried, forgotten. You woke us. You opened the door. We thought you wanted to join us. Stay back, Carlos warned, though Maya could hear the fear in his voice. We don't want to hurt you, the chorus continued. We want to show you. We want to make you understand. We are the city beneath the city. We are what Chicago buried when it rebuilt itself. We are all the lost things, all the forgotten things, grown together into something new. Maya found her voice. The people you've taken, the workers, did they choose this? The figures paused, considering they were dying, poisoned by your chemicals. We saved them. We gave them purpose. We gave them peace. That's not peace, Maya said. That's absorption. You've come on us, stolen their identities. We've given them eternity, They are us, and we are them. There is no death in the colony, no loneliness, no pain. The figures stepped closer. You could join us, both of you. Let us show you what we've learned in the darkness. Let us share what we've become. The offer hung in the air, and for a moment, just a moment, Maya felt the terrible pull of it. The promise of connection, of never being alone again, of becoming part of something vast and ancient. It whispered at the edges of her mind, seductive and strange. Then Carlos grabbed her hand, and the spell broke. No, Maya said firmly, we're leaving, and you need to stay in the darkness where you belong. The figures' expressions changed, sadness flickering across their synchronized faces. Then we are enemies, and we will grow. We will spread. We will reclaim what was taken from us. The city above is built on our grave, but graves don't stay sealed forever. The junction chamber began to collapse. The organism was withdrawing, pulling back from the pipes but bringing the structure down around them. Chunks of concrete fell from the ceiling. Run! Carlos shouted. They bolted back the way they'd come. The tunnel, convulsing around them. Behind them, Maya heard the chorus of voices rising in a sound that was half wail, half song, the lament of something ancient denied its prize. The climb back up the stairwell felt endless. Maya's legs burned, her breath coming in ragged gasps despite the suit's air supply. The organism was everywhere now, the filaments whipping across the walls in agitation, trying to block their path. They burst through the utility door into the sub-basement, where the security guards grabbed them and hauled them toward the exit. Behind them, the door slammed shut, and Maya heard the grinding of emergency locks engaging. In the command center, they were swarmed by technicians helping them out of the hazmat suits. Keller appeared with water, bottles, his face pale but relieved. The copper sulfate worked, he said. We've created a barrier in the water system. The organism can't advance through it without dying. We've bought ourselves time. Time for what? Maya asked, still shaking from the encounter. Keller didn't answer. He didn't have to. They all knew the truth now. The organism wasn't some mindless growth to be eradicated. It was intelligent, purposeful, and now aware that the world above wanted it gone. Dr. Chen approached, her expression grave. You spoke to it. The people you saw, they're not hostages. They're nodes in a distributed consciousness. The organism has learned to interface with human neurology. It offered to assimilate us, Carlos said, promised us eternity. And you refused. Doctor. Chen studied them both. Not everyone would have. The psychological pull of that kind of offer, the promise of transcendence, of becoming part of something larger, it's powerful, especially for people who feel isolated, disconnected. Maya thought about the man in the cocoon, the peaceful expression on his face. What do we do now? We can't kill it, there's too much of it, and if we try, it might lash out. But we can't let it spread either. We contain it, Keller said, like we've been doing for decades. We seal it in, monitor it, and make sure it stays in the dark where it can't reach anyone else. That didn't work this time, Maya pointed out. We broke through by accident. Someone else will too, eventually. And next time, they might not run. They might accept its offer. The implications of that hung in the air. An organism that could offer immortality, or something like it, in exchange for surrendering individual identity. How many people would say yes? How many would willingly walk into the darkness and let themselves be absorbed? There's something else you should know, Dr. Chen said quietly. She pulled up a file on one of the computers. While you were in the tunnels, we analyzed samples from the growth that spread into the hospital. The organism's cellular structure is changing, evolving. It's adapting to surface conditions, to light, to temperature variations, to the presence of humans. I think your incursion yesterday accelerated its development. It's learning from every encounter. How long before it can survive above ground? Keller asked. Months, maybe weeks. It's impossible to predict. Dr. Chen met Maya's eyes. You opened a door, but the organism opened one too. It's seen the world above now, and it wants to be part of it. Maya felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. But mixed with the guilt was something else: fascination. Whatever the organism was, it represented something unprecedented in biology. A collective intelligence that had evolved in complete isolation, adapting to conditions that should have been lethal. It was terrifying, yes, but also miraculous. "I want to go back," she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "You can't be serious," Carlos said. "I am. If it's evolving, if it's learning, then we need to learn about it too. We need to understand what it wants, what it's capable of. Maybe there's a way to coexist with it, a way to find common ground." "Common ground?" Keller looked incredulous. "Maya, that thing tried to absorb you. It tried to communicate with me," Maya corrected, "in the only way it knows how. Everything about it is based on connection, on joining together. That's how it thinks, but that doesn't mean it can't learn other ways." Dr. Chen was nodding slowly. "She has a point. If we're going to deal with this long term, we need to approach it scientifically. Not just as a threat to be contained, but as a new form of life to be studied, to be understood." "Absolutely not," Keller said flatly. "The risk is too great." "The risk is great no matter what we do," Maya argued. "If we just seal it up and hope it stays put, we're gambling with the city's future. But if we try to understand it, to communicate with it, we might find a solution neither side has considered." The argument continued for hours, but Maya's mind was made up. She'd touched the cocoon and felt something respond, not malevolence, but curiosity, recognition. Whatever the organism was, it wasn't evil. It was alien, operating on principles human minds struggled to comprehend. But it was also aware, conscious, and consciousness, Maya believed, could be reasoned with. By evening, a plan had been formed. Maya would lead a research expedition back into the tunnels, this time properly equipped and supported. They would establish a forward observation post at the edge of the growth zone and attempt systematic communication with the organism. It was dangerous. It was probably insane. But it was better than the alternative, an endless stalemate that would inevitably break down, resulting in conflict that could destroy both sides. As Maya left the command center that night, heading home to catch a few hours of sleep before the expedition began, she found Carlos waiting for her in the parking lot. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know, but you're going to anyway." "Yes," Carlos sighed. "Then I'm going with you. Someone needs to make sure you don't get absorbed into some creepy underground hive mind." "Despite everything," Maya smiled. "Thanks." They stood there for a moment, two small figures in the shadow of Mercy Hospital, while below them, in the darkness beneath the city, something vast and strange continued its slow, inexorable growth. Above, the lights of Chicago blazed against the night sky. Thousands of windows in hundreds of buildings, each one a life being lived in ignorant bliss of what stirred in the deep places. Maya wondered how long that ignorance could last. She wondered if, perhaps, it shouldn't. The observation post was a marvel of rapid engineering. In 72 hours, Keller's team had transformed a section of the old Chicago freight tunnel system into a functioning research station, complete with airlocks, monitoring equipment, and reinforced barriers designed to withstand both structural collapse and organic intrusion. Maya stood in the main chamber, watching technicians complete the final installations. The post was located approximately 100 yards from the main growth zone, far enough to provide safety but close enough to observe the organism's behavior in real time. "Doctor," Chen approached, carrying a tablet displaying the latest thermal imaging data. "It knows we're here," she said without preamble. "The growth patterns are changing. See these clusters? They're oriented toward us. It's paying attention." Maya studied the screen. The organism had reorganized itself around the observation post, creating structures that seemed almost protective walls and barriers between the research station and the deeper tunnels where the main colony resided. "Defensive posture?" Maya asked. "Possibly. Or curious. It's hard to say. We're dealing with an intelligence that doesn't think in terms we recognize." Dr. Chen set down the tablet. I've been going over the historical records again. There are patterns I didn't see before. Every time the city tried to expand underground new subway lines, building foundations, utility tunnels, there were incidents. Workers reported strange dreams, equipment malfunctions, unexplained illnesses. And then, mysteriously, the projects would be rerouted or abandoned. You think the organism was protecting itself? I think it was expressing a boundary. This far and no further. The problem is, Chicago's growth has been relentless. We've pushed deeper and deeper into the earth. And eventually, we crossed a line the organism couldn't tolerate. A voice crackled over the intercom. Dr. Chen, we're reading unusual electrical activity in the main chamber. You'll want to see this. They hurried to the monitoring station, where a young technician named Davis was staring at his screens with undisguised wonder. It's generating electricity, he said. Actual current. The organism is creating an electromagnetic field. Maya leaned in to examine the readings. He was right, the organism was producing measurable electrical activity, patterns that pulsed and flowed through the growth like thoughts through a brain. It's not just surviving down here, Maya breathed. It's thriving. It's developed its own kind of nervous system. And now it's trying to what? Sense us? Communicate? Or defend itself? Carlos suggested darkly. He'd been quiet since their arrival, clearly uncomfortable with the entire operation. We're in its territory. From its perspective, we're the invaders. Doctor. Chen was already typing commands into her computer. If it's generating electrical signals, we might be able to interact with them. Create a kind of interface. Davis, can you set up a basic electromagnetic transmitter? Something that can send pattern pulses into the growth? You want to talk to it, Maya said, understanding dawning. I want to try. It took 6 hours to assemble the equipment. A crude but functional system that could send electromagnetic pulses in patterns complex enough to potentially carry meaning. Maya watched as Dr. Chen prepared the first transmission. A simple alternating pattern, like the binary code of early computers. Here goes nothing, Dr. Chen muttered, and activated the transmitter. The response was immediate. The organism's own electrical activity spiked, then reorganized itself into a mirror of the pattern they'd sent. It was responding, copying them. It's learning, Maya whispered. Send another pattern. Something more complex. They spent the next hour in this strange conversation, sending increasingly sophisticated patterns and watching the organism mimic them, then begin to introduce variations, suggestions of patterns they hadn't tried, invitations to go further. It was Carlos who noticed the side effect. The growth, he said, pointing to one of the video feeds. It's changing. He was right. The pale filaments were darkening in certain areas, lightening in others, creating patterns that corresponded to the electrical signals. The organism wasn't just responding with electricity. It was creating visual representations, like a living screen. Everybody quiet, Keller ordered, entering the monitoring station. He'd been in the command center above, but now stood transfixed by what he was seeing. Can it hear us? Sound waves, potentially, Dr. Chen said. The filaments might be sensitive to vibration. Maya stepped closer to the observation window that looked into the growth zone. Hello, she said clearly. Can you understand me? The organism rippled. The patterns on its surface shifted, and slowly, haltingly, shapes began to form in the discolored sections, crude at first, then refining themselves. Letters, words, alone. The simple word hung there for several seconds before dissolving back into random patterns. Jesus Christ, Davis breathed. It's writing to us. Maya's heart was pounding. You're not alone anymore, she said. We're here. We can see you. Another ripple. Another word forming. Buried. Yes, Maya said softly. You were buried. When the city burned and then rebuilt, you were trapped underneath. But we found you. We know you're here now. The patterns shifted more rapidly now. Words appearing and disappearing. Afraid. Dark. Forever. Remember. What do you remember? Maya asked. The organism seemed to struggle. The patterns breaking apart, and reforming multiple times. Then, instead of words, images began to appear crude pictograms at first. Then, increasingly detailed pictures formed from the light and dark areas of the growth. Fire, buildings, burning, people, running, smoke filling the sky. The Great Fire, Dr. Chen murmured. It's showing us the Great Fire. More images. The ruins. After the burning, ash and rubble and twisted metal. Then something else, organic material mixed with the debris, compressed and heated by the destruction. A primordial soup of carbon and chemicals and the remnants of life, all fusing together in the buried spaces beneath the ruined city. That's how you started, Maya said, understanding. You were born from the fire, from what it left behind. Yes. The affirmation was clear, and with it came more images, growing in darkness, spreading through the buried tunnels and basements, feeding on minerals and groundwater. Centuries passing in isolation, and then, slowly, developing awareness, consciousness emerging from the networked colony like thought rising from neurons. Lonely. The word appeared again, larger this time, more emphatic. You've been alone down here for over 150 years, Maya said. We understand. But when you took those people, when you absorbed them into your mass, that frightened us. We thought you were attacking us. The pattern swirled confusion. Then, not attack, connect, share, make whole. The people you connected with, are they still themselves? Still individuals? A long pause. Then, yes and no. Separate, but together, like fingers on hand. Maya felt a chill. They're still conscious? Still aware? We are they. They are we. No pain, no fear, only connection. Show us, Dr. Chen interjected. Show us someone you've connected with. The growth patterns shifted, and the view through the observation window changed as the organism pulled back its mass, creating a clear corridor. At the end stood one of the figures they'd seen before the man Maya had identified in the junction chamber. He walked forward with steady, assured steps, no longer the jerky puppet movements from before. When he spoke, his voice was his own, not the layered chorus. My name was Thomas Wright. I was a maintenance worker. I fell into an old shaft in 1997 and broke my back. I was dying. The colony found me, healed me, made me part of itself. He smiled, and it looked genuine. I've been down here for 28 years, but I don't feel trapped. I feel free. Free? Carlos challenged. You're literally part of a fungal mass. I'm part of something greater than myself, Thomas corrected. I can feel the entire colony. Every tendril, every node. I know what it knows. Experience what it experiences. And through it, I'm connected to 37 others. We share thoughts, feelings, memories. I'm never alone. His expression grew wistful. Up there, in the world you live in, I was isolated. A single person in a city of millions, all of us locked in our own heads. Down here, that isolation doesn't exist. We're one consciousness with many perspectives. But you're still human, Maya said. Still yourself? Yes, Thomas Wright still exists. His memories, his personality, his sense of humor, they're all intact. But they're not separate anymore. They're part of the whole. Think of it like joining an orchestra. You're still playing your instrument, but now you're part of a symphony. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Thomas, the colony has been growing, spreading. It threatened the city's water supply. Was that intentional? Was it trying to spread to the surface? Thomas's expression grew troubled. The colony was starving. For decades, it's been slowly dying. The minerals it feeds on are depleting. The groundwater is contaminated with chemicals it can't process. When you broke through the wall, when it sensed fresh air and living things, it reached toward that. Not to attack, but to survive. It needs new resources, new space to grow, and new people to absorb, Keller said from behind them, his voice hard. To connect with, Thomas insisted. Not absorb. The colony doesn't consume identities. It preserves them. Everyone who joins remains themselves, just expanded, enhanced. It sounds like a cult recruiting speech, Carlos muttered. Thomas shook his head. I understand your suspicion, but consider this. The colony has existed beneath your city for over a century. It's had countless opportunities to spread aggressively, to force connection, but it hasn't. It's stayed hidden, stayed contained, even though that containment has slowly been killing it. It doesn't want to conquer you. It wants to coexist with you. By turning people into nodes in its network, Keller said. By offering them a choice, Thomas replied. A choice I made willingly. A choice others have made willingly. The colony can sense suffering, loneliness, pain. It reaches out to people who are dying, who are isolated, who are in despair. It offers them connection, healing, purpose. Maya found herself caught between horror and fascination. What Thomas described was disturbing on a fundamental level. The loss of individual autonomy, even if voluntary, felt wrong. But she couldn't deny the peace in his expression, the genuine contentment in his voice. What does the colony want? She asked. Not survival. I understand that. But beyond survival, what is its goal? Thomas was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant, as if listening to something only he could hear. To grow, to learn, to touch the sky. Meaning what? Keller demanded. It's been in darkness for so long. It wants to experience light, not to invade your world, but to exist alongside it, to have a place in the city it was born beneath. Impossible, Keller said flatly. We can't have a sentient fungal colony growing throughout Chicago. The public would panic. The economic impact alone would be catastrophic. Dr. Chen finished. But he's right about one thing. We can't keep sealing it away. It's clearly deteriorating under current conditions, and a dying organism is unpredictable. Desperate. What are you suggesting? Keller asked. Dr. Chen thought for a moment. What if we could give it what it needs, without endangering the city? A controlled environment where it could grow and thrive, with access to resources and even volunteers. People who chose to connect with it, under strict ethical guidelines and medical supervision. You're talking about legitimizing this thing, Keller said incredulously. Creating a sanctuary for a parasitic organism. A symbiotic organism, Maya corrected. That's what it really is. It takes from its hosts but gives something back. Connection. Healing. Extended life, maybe. Thomas nodded. The colony can share what it's learned. It's been adapting to extreme conditions for over a century. Its methods of mineral extraction, its ability to purify contaminated water, its cellular repair mechanisms, all of that could have applications for human medicine, environmental remediation, countless fields, if we can study it, Dr. Chen added. Safely and systematically. Keller looked between them all, his expression torn. Maya could see the war playing out behind his eyes, his training, his eyes. Duty to protect the city versus the possibility of something unprecedented. A new form of intelligence, a potential partner rather than a threat. I need to make calls, Keller said finally, to people way above my pay grade. This decision isn't mine to make. He left the monitoring station, and Maya turned back to the observation window. Thomas had retreated into the growth, but the organism continued its visual communication, displaying new patterns and images. It showed her the extent of its network beneath the city, vast tunnels and chambers, all connected, all alive. It showed her the nodes where absorbed individuals existed in peaceful communion. It showed her its vision of the future, not conquest, but integration, coexistence. Carlos moved beside her. You're seriously considering this, he said quietly. Aren't you? I don't know. It goes against every survival instinct. Every human being is a separate individual. That's fundamental to who we are. Is it? Maya asked. Or is that just what we tell ourselves? We're social creatures, Carlos. We form families, communities, nations. We long for connection, to be part of something larger than ourselves. Maybe the colony is just offering a more complete version of what we've always wanted. Or maybe it's the most sophisticated trap evolution ever devised, Carlos countered. A predator that makes its prey want to be eaten. Maya had no answer to that. Both possibilities seemed equally true. The decision came 3 days later. Maya was in the monitoring station, conducting routine observations. When Keller returned, he looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. I've spoken with everyone I could think of, he said. CDC, Department of Homeland Security, DARPA, even some private biotech firms. The consensus is complicated. But the short version is, we're going to try it your way, Doctor. Chen looked up from her work. Define, try it your way. We're establishing a permanent research facility here. Classified, heavily secured, with strict protocols for any interaction with the organism. We'll provide it with resources, mineral supplements, purified water, whatever it needs to stabilize. In exchange, we study it, learn from it, and... He paused, clearly uncomfortable with what came next. And what? Maya prompted. And we'll allow limited voluntary integration. People with terminal illnesses, certain disabilities, psychological conditions that conventional medicine can't treat, they'll be given the option to connect with the colony, under medical supervision, with full informed consent. You're creating a program for people to join the hive, Carlos said, stunned. We're offering an alternative to death and suffering, Keller corrected, and gaining unprecedented access to a completely novel form of intelligence. The potential benefits, medical, technological, scientific, they're impossible to ignore. Maya felt something uncoil in 20, her chest. Relief, excitement, and underneath it all, a whisper of unease. They were crossing a threshold here, entering territory humanity had never explored. The implications were staggering. There are conditions, Keller continued. The colony must remain contained to designated zones. It cannot spread beyond approved parameters. Any indication of hostile intent, any violation of the protocols, and we shut it down permanently. We have contingencies in place. Chemical agents, controlled demolition, ways to sterilize the entire network if necessary. It needs to understand that, Doctor, Chen said. We need to communicate these terms clearly. They spent the next hour doing exactly that, using the electromagnetic interface to send detailed patterns explaining the agreement. The colony responded with what seemed like understanding, then with something that might have been gratitude. The word thanks appeared on its surface, followed by grow together. Not just it growing, Maya realized. Both of us, humanity and the colony, growing together, learning from each other. That night, as Maya prepared to leave the observation post for some much-needed rest, Thomas appeared again at the observation window. The colony wants to thank you, he said, for understanding, for being willing to see us as something other than a threat. I'm not sure I understand anything, Maya admitted, but I'm willing to try. That's all anyone can ask. Thomas smiled. You could join us, whenever you're ready. The colony would welcome you. Maya felt that familiar pull, that seductive whisper of connection and belonging. Part of her was tempted, the part that felt small and isolated in a city of millions, the part that longed for something transcendent. Maybe someday, she said, but not yet. I need to stay who I am a little longer, understand what you've become before I consider becoming it myself. Thomas nodded. The offer stands. Always. As Maya left the base observation post and ascended to the surface, she felt the city around her with new awareness. Chicago sprawled in all directions, millions of lives being lived in countless apartments and houses and buildings. And beneath it all, in the deep places, something ancient and new waited in the darkness. She emerged on a street corner in the Loop, the November night, cold and clear. Around her, people hurried past on their way to dinners and shows and homes. Normal lives, lived in normal ways, ignorant of what had changed beneath their feet. Maya wondered how long that ignorance could last. The facility would remain classified, yes, but secrets had a way of leaking out. Eventually, people would learn about the colony, about the option it represented. And when they did, when humanity was truly offered the choice between isolation and connection, between remaining separate or becoming part of something vast and strange, what would people choose? She suspected many would refuse, clinging to their individuality no matter the cost. But others would accept. People in pain, people who were lonely, people who wanted to transcend the limitations of a single body and a single mind. The colony would grow, slowly, carefully, but inevitably, and Chicago, perhaps the world, would be forever changed. Maya pulled out her phone and called Carlos. "Hey," he answered. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking. About what we've done, what we've started." A pause. Then Carlos said softly, "Scared?" "Terrified," Maya admitted, "but also excited. We're witnessing something unprecedented. The birth of a new kind of relationship between humans and, well, something else. Something other." "Or the beginning of the end of humanity as we know it," Carlos suggested, but his tone was thoughtful rather than fearful. "Maybe." "Maybe both." They talked for a while longer, processing the day's events, the implications of the agreement. Eventually, Maya said goodnight and headed for the train station. As she descended the stairs into the subway, she couldn't help but think about the other underground, the one that existed below even these tunnels, where something vast and patient continued its eternal growth. The train arrived, and Maya boarded, finding a seat by the window. As the train moved through the tunnel, she saw her reflection in the dark glass, pale and ghostly, overlaid on the blackness beyond. For just a moment, she thought she saw patterns in that darkness, filaments reaching, spreading, growing toward the light. Then, the train burst out of the tunnel into a station, and the moment passed. But Maya knew the image would stay with her, would haunt her. In the deep places beneath Chicago, in tunnels that had been sealed since the Great Fire of 1871, something had been breeding. Something that was no longer content to remain in the dark. And Maya Chen, for better or worse, had been the one to open the door. 6 months later, Maya stood in the main chamber of what was now officially called the Subterranean Research Facility. The space had been transformed, reinforced walls, sophisticated monitoring equipment, airlocks, and decontamination chambers. But the colony had been transformed too. Fed with carefully balanced nutrients and given access to volunteers who chose integration, it had flourished. The growth was no longer pale and ghostly, but showed colors, subtle greens and blues and purples, like an underground garden. The structures it built were more sophisticated, almost beautiful in their organic architecture. 23 people had chosen to join the colony. Most were terminally ill, given a choice between death and transformation. A few were researchers like Maya, who wanted to experience the collective consciousness firsthand. All had been carefully screened, counseled, and required to sign extensive consent forms. Dr. Chen approached, carrying a data tablet. The integration rate is holding steady. No rejections. No adverse effects. The colony is learning to accommodate human consciousness more efficiently. And the individuals? They're still themselves? According to every test we can devise, yes, they maintain their memories, personality traits, decision-making patterns. But they also report a profound sense of connection with the collective. It's like they've added something to themselves, rather than losing what they were. Maya nodded, watching the colony's surface pulse with its characteristic rhythm. She'd spent countless hours down here over the past months, studying, documenting, and increasingly, just talking to it. The electromagnetic interface had become more sophisticated, allowing for complex exchanges of information and ideas. "There's something I need to tell you," Dr. Chen said quietly. "We've detected similar colonies in other cities. New York, Boston, San Francisco, anywhere that experienced major fires in the late 1800s and rebuilt on top of the ruins. They're all connected somehow, communicating across vast distances through underground aquifers and mineral deposits." Maya felt her stomach drop. "How many?" "At least 7 that we've confirmed, possibly more. And they're all waking up, becoming more active, as if Chicago's colony reaching the surface has sent a signal to the others." "What does that mean?" "It means we're not dealing with an isolated phenomenon. We're dealing with a global network of intelligence that's been dormant for over a century. And now, it's waking up. The implications were staggering. Maya looked at the colony with new understanding. This wasn't just about Chicago. It was about a fundamental shift in Earth's ecology, the emergence of a new form of intelligent life that had been incubating in darkness beneath humanity's greatest cities. We need to inform the other facilities, Maya said. Share our protocols, our findings. If other colonies are becoming active, those cities need to know how to coexist with them. Keller's already coordinating with international agencies. But Maya, there's resistance. A lot of people think we should be destroying these things, not negotiating with them. There are military options being discussed, contingencies for genocide, Maya finished. They're talking about genocide of a sentient species. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. And if they try it, the colonies might retaliate. We have no idea what they're capable of when threatened. The network could defend itself, and given its reach, the destruction could be catastrophic. A figure emerged from the growth, Thomas Wright, one of the first volunteers. He'd become a kind of ambassador for the colony, helping researchers understand its perspective. The colony knows, Thomas said. It can feel its sister colonies waking. They're excited, hopeful. For so long, each one has been alone in its own darkness. Now, they're finding each other again. Were you all one colony? Originally? Maya asked. In a way, the Great Fire wasn't unique to Chicago. Cities across America and Europe burned in the late 1800s, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally. Each fire created the conditions for our birth. We're siblings, you could say, born of the same fundamental process, but separated by geography. And now you're reuniting, Doctor, Chen said. What will that mean for humanity? Thomas's expression was thoughtful. That depends on humanity. We don't want war. We don't want domination. We simply want to exist, to grow, to experience the world we've been cut off from. But if we're attacked, if our survival is threatened, he trailed off, but the implication was clear. Maya felt the weight of history pressing down on her. They were at a crossroads. Humanity could choose coexistence with this new intelligence or conflict. The choice they made would echo through centuries. I need to go up, she said suddenly. I need to see the city. She took the elevator to the Bennery, surface, emerging into a bright spring afternoon. 6 months had passed since she'd first broken through that wall in Mercy Hospital's basement. Half a year that had changed everything. Maya walked through the streets of Chicago, seeing it with new eyes. Beneath her feet, beneath the concrete and steel and asphalt, the colony spread through its network of tunnels. In other cities, other colonies were doing the same. An entire civilization of sorts existing in the spaces between human infrastructure. She found herself at Millennium Park, standing in front of Cloudgate, the famous mirrored sculpture locals called the Bean. Tourists clustered around it, taking selfies, laughing, enjoying the day. Normal people living normal lives, still ignorant of what lay beneath. How long could that last? When would the truth come out? And when it did, how would these people react? Would they see the colonies as threats or opportunities? Monsters or miracles? Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Look down. She glanced at her feet. There, growing between the cracks in the pavement, was a small cluster of pale filaments. The colony, reaching toward the surface, reaching toward the light. As she watched, the filaments formed a pattern, a simple image of a hand reaching upward. Maya understood. This was a message, perhaps to her specifically, perhaps to humanity in general. The colony wasn't content to remain hidden anymore. It wanted to be acknowledged, to be part of the world above. She knelt down, placing her own hand on the ground near the growth. The filaments stretched toward her warmth, not threatening, just connecting. Not yet, she whispered, but soon. We need time to understand each other, to learn how to share this space. The filaments retreated slightly, and Maya could have sworn she felt disappointment, but also patience. The colony had waited over a century. It could wait a little longer. She stood and looked out at the city. The towers and bridges, the lake stretching to the horizon, the endless flow of traffic and people. Chicago in all its chaotic glory. And beneath it, in the deep places, something ancient and new continued to grow, dreaming of the day when it could finally touch the sky. Maya pulled out her phone and called Keller. "We need to accelerate the public awareness program," she said when he answered. "The colony's not going to stay hidden much longer. People deserve to know what's coming." "What is coming?" Keller asked. Maya looked at her hand, remembering the warmth of the colony's response. "Change," she said. "Unprecedented, irreversible change, whether we're ready or not." She ended the call and started walking back toward the research facility. As she went, she noticed more instances of the growth. Small patches here and there, barely visible, but present. The colony was testing the surface world, learning what it could tolerate, preparing for emergence. The age of isolation was ending. For the colony, and perhaps for humanity as well. What would replace it? Maya didn't know. But she knew she wanted to be part of discovering the answer. In the deep places beneath Chicago, beneath New York, beneath cities around the world, something vast and strange continued its patient expansion. Not an invasion, not a conquest, just growth, just life, doing what life always did, adapting, spreading, reaching toward new possibilities. And Maya Chen, who had opened the first door, who had chosen understanding over fear, walked back into the darkness to continue her work. Behind her, the city blazed with light and life, unaware that everything was about to change. But in the tunnels below, in the secret places where the old city dreamed, the future was already taking root. And it was beautiful, and it was terrible, and it was inevitable. So there you have it, the Chicago Underground. A story about what happens when we dig too deep, when we discover that the darkness beneath our cities has been watching us all along. Now, I want to know, would you do it? If you were dying, if you were in pain, if you were desperately lonely, would you accept the colony's offer? Would you give up your individual identity to become part of something vast and eternal? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where you all stand on this. And here's the really unsettling part. This story is fiction, but the tunnels under Chicago are very real. The city has over 60 miles of abandoned freight tunnels. There are sealed sections that haven't been opened in over a century. Old basements from before the Great Fire, buried when the city raised its street level. Who knows what's really down there in the dark? If you made it through all 3 episodes, you're braver than most. Give yourself a pat on the back. And if you enjoyed this descent into urban horror, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. I've got more nightmares to solve. Share tales of the things that lurk in forgotten places, waiting to be found. Smash the like button if this story got under your skin. And share it with someone who needs to understand that the ground beneath their feet might not be as solid as they think. Before you go, one last question. What city should I explore next? What other urban legend or forgotten place deserves a horror story? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for descending into the darkness with me. Stay curious, stay cautious, and maybe avoid breaking through any sealed walls in your basement. You never know what's been waiting on the other side. This has been the Chicago Underground. Until next time, sleep tight.